Willie, we got Victor here on the line. What do you want to ask him?
Have you ever had a major setback in multifamily, and how did you navigate that setback?
I bought a property in Ohio. The property manager was also the project manager, and they actually stripped our units down. We put a bunch of money into renovating and trying to bring it up because when we bought it, it was 50% occupied, another no-no. And then they stole, right? They stole money, they stole materials, and they were moving stuff around. Not just me, but a couple of other apartment owners that they managed their properties that were out-of-state owners. So that's a huge setback, man. Like that threw a wrench in our whole world because people just assume, oh, money got stolen. Well, like I said, we had 50% occupied, then it dropped to 30. And here we still have tenants in this property from a multifamily owner perspective. And I still had to continue to pay water, trash, common area electric, even though no money was coming in. That comes out of pocket. So that was a huge setback. How did I overcome it? Well, unfortunately, we had to throw the towel in. Like, again, I share that story as an upset, but I didn't realize, which I do leave out because I try to take full responsibility, that the market tanked. I didn't know the market was tanking. That's my joke, right? Felt like it was just going on in my world, but the whole world took a shock during that.
I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Very excited for today's show. It's another one of our Ask the Expert episodes, and we got two great people on the line with us today. Our experienced investor today, Victor Bell, aspiring investor, Willie Henriquez. So guys, welcome to the show today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate you.
Awesome. Absolutely, guys. So as tradition, Victor, you're up to the plate first. So do us a favor, tell us a little about yourself, give us your story.
Awesome. Again, thanks so much for having me. Like, I like to share. I'm like, man, if I had this when I got started, I'd probably be 10 years ahead of where I am today.
Right. Yeah.
How I got started, my background, I'll give cliff notes to my world, right? Yeah. So I left home when I was really young. I was about 12 and a half. I at least left my mom's house and my dad's house. So about 13, got to my dad or so, had my first kid when I was 14, got kicked out of high school and went to the Army, which was good. And got out of the Army and dropped out of college off of the free college money. That's the pitch, right? Like, get in, we'll pay for your college. I dropped out first semester, got in trouble. I moved back to Texas and I was on probation, had to get a job. And while working this job, I noticed two things. Most people hated that job. And I was new and I actually didn't want to be there either. So, driving home one night, because I worked nights, I ended up running off the side of the road, fell asleep behind the wheel. And I woke up the next day and I, had to turn around and do it all over again. And I was like, all right, I got to do something different. And that day I went to work early, went to a bookstore, and there was a book on the shelf. I looked at all the business books and I was like, all right, which one? What am I going to do with myself? And, it was a real estate book. And I was like, you know what? Okay. And I went there all week and I sat that book down and I read a little bit of it. And, end of the week, I bought the book and went back to work and, read the script, got the newspaper, started cold calling the numbers like the book said. And that first year I did $1.2 million in real estate deals.
Wow.
And it wasn't through non-grunt effort. That's kind of my, skill set.
It was through grinding.
Yeah. We call it too stupid to know better. So we just chop forward. So that's what I did. And I met, my first business partner at the time, who were my, credit partners, financial partners. And I brought a deal to the table. And that deal, one deal turned out to be 24 properties, all multifamily. One house was in there. The rest were multifamily properties. And truth be told, I didn't even know what I was doing, but I knew that was the route to go.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started. And I've progressed, ever since the 90s, ever since then. And I'm still rocking and rolling. So that's kind of my background.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about that progression. I mean, so you started out, just following the script, doing what you said you were doing. How did that progress from there? And how did the multifamily portfolio build from that point?
Well, in the first deal that I got, like I called, which was my first partners at the time, Bob and Jamie. Jamie's my investor relations manager in Bell Capital now. Yep. But, Bob was like, hey, call back and see if they have more properties. Because the only thing was for sale was a house in the newspaper. It was a for sale by owner thing. And they're like, yeah, we got 300 properties, man. You know, we'll give you one. We'll give you something. Just come to the office. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm in business. So there was a lot of there was some duplexes, triplexes, 6plex, 12 unit, at 8 unit, 10. So there was a bunch of little multifamily properties around in there. This was in Texas. So I recognized really quickly, and I tell everyone the same, real estate investing is really, I say it's based on your personality as well. I knew that I was just overseeing these properties. I'm not, I wasn't a manager prior to that. I didn't have any background experience in real estate or anything for that matter. But I knew the house was the biggest headache out of all the deals that we got. The rug, it was vacant. Everything else had tenants in there and they were paying. So it was like, even while I was learning, it was like, all right, these people paid, and I'm calling and I'm talking to Bob and Jamie and everybody in the office. What do I do? What do I do? It was always, hey, these people didn't show up. The rug has to be ripped out. This thing has covered in this. So it was like, all right, let's get rid of the house and we'll just take the money from that and then, partner whatever. And then we'll keep these and later we'll fix those and sell them.
Yeah.
So to your point, that was really the multifamily experience because again, I didn't know, naturally, I learned, through either asking them, going to seminars, things like that over time, more, there wasn't really a lot of books on multifamily at the time, and later, after years went by, I started getting educated on multifamily. But again, I had the experience prior to the education, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Some people do it. There's two ways to do it. There's get the experience, realize you need the education. And I'd say the good part about that is, you don't know what you don't know. You get in, you start hustling and you make stuff happen. And I think a lot of people do that route. I mean, if you had a magic wand and you could go back and do things over again, just curious, how do you think you would have done it?
Hindsight 2020, right? But at the time, it was the biggest and best thing that I ever really done. So I probably know what I know now because of the trajectory that I'm on in my life. I would have focused on getting more partners, more investors, more credit people. I would have lined up that in my world as opposed to just being the guy that ran around and hunted down deals with a noose around my neck every time I got a deal, right? So, and I'm sure, anybody who does real estate or even wants to get into real estate, you get into real estate because you want to be financially free. And I said it on another interview. I was like, really, it's probably not the freedom people are looking for, it's the flexibility. And the people that have hey, I got money and I want to invest, or I got access to capital, I got access to investors. Those people are like, hey, they get to pick. But when you have a deal, you're like, man, I got this great deal. And you have to run around and sell that to money. And, people will, depending on the circumstances, because I had it happen to me a lot, they ran me around, man. They were like, yeah, that's awesome. And sure, we'll do 50-50. And later it's like, let's just do, less, and you have to eat that because you chalk it up to, well, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Like, well, how much did I really need to learn?
And when you have the deal under contract, you're on the clock too. I mean, you are literally, depending on where you are in the process, but the contract's going to have a timeline on it. And so if you have your investors lined up beforehand, it's so much easier to get things done and accomplished. Whereas if you wait till you're on the clock, and you're like, oh crap, I need $1 million or 500,000 or whatever the number is.
It matters.
Oh my gosh. Now you're scrambling, and
right.
Yeah, I've done that before. I don't want to do it again, but well, cool. So let's talk about, specifically one of the multifamily projects you've done, your favorite one to talk about, and tell us a little bit about it.
I have a couple, but I'll do one that's relevant, if that makes sense, right? Because, some people do stuff. So I picked up and now I was telling somebody this yesterday, actually. I was like, how people talk about market cycles and the market in 2008 and 2009. Well, during 2008 and 2009, I just thought my world was coming down. I didn't know the world was crashing, because I do real estate full time. I don't have another job. I didn't have another thing going on. So we lost the property we bought. We had to file for bankruptcy to protect ourselves because we got screwed over by a project manager and, us and a bunch of other apartment building owners, right? So coming out of that 12-month cycle of staying in court, saying, hey, we don't have any money. There's no fraud, blah, blah, blah. The judge was like, fine. And then we got released from court. So during the next 90 days, I bought $11 million worth of real estate. Those deals created who I am today. It wasn't all the stuff that I had did prior to that. It was that because I had never worked so hard in my life. So first things first about that property. I talked to a broker connection that I had. His name's Ken. And Ken was like, I was like, hey, look, here's what's happening, because he knew what was going on. I was like, I gotta figure this out. He's like, I got a deal I can sell you. I think it's worth, I think it'll be worth, 3.2, 3.3. You just come up with 300 grand. Do you have 300 grand? And I was like, yes. And I was like, dude, I just told you what I've been going through for the last year. And he was like, look, I'll let you get that deal. You go raise the money. I will sell or finance it to you within an agreement to sell. He was like, you can take over operations of that deal. I need the money because I'm in a development deal. I'm pumping money towards that. I don't have time to mess with this deal. So I was like, all right, cool. I tell people I never worked so hard in my life. I really got a grasp of what it meant to what you said earlier, because I had to go back to my original skills of like, I needed to go raise money. I needed to raise it fast. I had to do it, in a very short timeline, and all the stakes were on the line. That deal turned into, so we closed that deal. I closed that deal. It turned into a flagship deal. And then I went back to Ken and I was like, hey, Ken, he's like, hey, I got another deal. I'll do the same thing with you. Go get 250. And I was like, okay. So, I ran off to go do that. So then all of a sudden we got another deal. That was like, it's like 1.5. We got her for 1.2, raised the money for that. So it started building. And then I was able to go to the bank and say, hey, against my attorneys, I say these are my best deals, because it was counterintuitive thoughts. Against my attorney's will. She's like, why would you get added to the loan if you have a credit partner, you have this? And I was like, because I need to build my reputation with lenders.
Yes.
Commercial capacity. So I went and added my name to the loan, because she's like, well, you're adding more risk. And I was like, I want risk. This is real estate, right? And those deals built myself up to look for where I am today, to be like, oh, wow. So good. I busted my ass. Like I did whatever it took. And it really established what it really means now, but now it's I understand it now, to be a syndicator, to be a fund manager, to go raise capital, put a deal together, sit down in front, structure the bank, structure the debt, structure and oversee people. But it all really spawned off of project managers not doing their job. And really during that time, me, even though I went down there because it was an out-of-state property, I was there, but it still wasn't enough. So I know what it takes now to raise money, get investors, to sit down in front of them, to not be like, yeah, let's get on a Zoom, to fly where they are if I have to sit in front of somebody because I've made an agreement with someone else. And now that I'm forward that, I'm like, okay, how do I reverse polarity of that? How do we just create a fund, spend all my time building a team, raising capital, and then go select the right deals? So we're in a reverse polarity of that. I don't want to be scrambling for the next 20, 30, 40 years of my life. So everyone that's new, I tell people, do it with someone else. I've always done it with partners. Always. And I've either dealt with people who had the money, who didn't have the time, or I've partnered with people who were able to get the deals. And I was like, hey, look, let me figure out the capital. We'll figure out how we're going to structure this. But if the deal's good enough, let's figure this out and go do it. So, and again, it's multifamily. It's not a house. You still got to know your numbers. You still got to have, multiple exit strategies, and it still has to make financial sense. But that was my best deal, because that created who I believe that I've always been, because I've always wanted to succeed in real estate.
Nice. That was kind of like the get the snowball rolling type deal is what it sounds like. So awesome. A couple of points you brought out that I'll just highlight for some of the listeners. I mean, the being on a loan is a powerful thing. All right. It does bring more risk, but if you want to have a career in this business, you want to start putting your name on loans as early as possible. And that way you don't have to bring people in later, to be on that loan with you. Everybody's going to need somebody with them on their first loan. Okay. Everybody's going to do it. Right. So the sooner you get that credibility with the lenders, the sooner you're going to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, when it comes to the same lenders. So thanks for sharing that piece specifically, and everything else too. I mean, it was all gold. So, all right. Next question for you, and it's about motivation. What is your big burning why?
This is, again, all of my world is counterintuitive. People listen to me and they're like, that's not what I thought. Mine is fear. I am deadly afraid that I'm wrong about myself. I promised my wife, my kids, a lot of stuff. The people who work with me, I'm like, hey, we're going to win. Here's what we're doing. And like, because of it, it continues to move me forward. So unlike other people who I'm very self-aware, like, well, I want to, do this, and I want to build churches and schools over all these other places. I'm not there yet. right? I have a very big goal. Most of the time that I'm not happy is because either I've achieved something and I got comfortable. That's why we moved to California. I got comfortable. So I set these really big targets, and my motivation is that I'm wrong. And I refuse to be wrong about it. I'd rather do it, get there, and be like, oh, it's not as fun as I thought. So that actually motivates me, motivates me to succeed. It isn't, naturally I want to create generational wealth for my family. That's a thing. But the reality of it is like we said, I can't do that alone. So I got to create a lot of generational wealth for a lot of other people with the direction we're going. And there's a lot of pressure to do that. So when you get somebody like some guy who's achieved a lot and you go, man, what's your motivation? They're not going to wake up and go, well, I want to make sure that my shareholders are happy. They don't. It's like, I can't let the house of cards come down, and I got to keep moving forward because we have such a big target to hit. So I think there's a healthy level of fear and also constructive dissatisfaction, right? Like I mean, especially for me, for real estate, like I think about real estate as a career path and acquiring, 4,000, 5,000, 20,000 apartment units, all building this fund, building this thing that I've always wanted to do with my world. Like there has to be a time where I look around and go, yeah, that 50 unit apartment building is too small for where we're going past. Let's look at 150, 200 units. And we got to raise the money. Let's go do that anyways. And then fear sets in where I'm like, oh shit, I just said yes. And now I got to put the nose to the grindstone, tell everyone else, no, this needs to happen. There's an angle of we call it motivation, but motivation is an internal job, right?
Yeah.
But how do you stay motivated? External factors. So, it's one thing to be wrong about me. It's another thing for everyone else to be wrong about me. And I can't live with that. So it's tough.
Sweet. Awesome. All right. Last question for you. What's next?
Getting to the 4,000 doors. That's my goal right now. We just started our fund. We're in the capital raise phase. The market shifted. So we kind of put the pins down, underwriting a lot of deals. And we're like, hey, go all in on what we're doing. We've circled about 10. We're going to get to 40. Come up to somewhere around August, and then I'm going to start fund 2 and then move on to fund 3 and then all the way up to however many funds we need to hit our targets. So that's next for me. And because I'm a long-term guy, I think long-term. So that's really the only thing that's next for us.
Nice.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to transition a little bit and bring Willie on. So Willie, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Awesome. Hey, well, thanks for being on this show. Very much appreciate you and your time. So tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
My name is Willie Henriquez. I'm based in Connecticut. What got me into real estate before that, I was taking care of people with disabilities for 7 years. I decided that I couldn't do this anymore because I was working third shift. So I started a trucking company with 2 of my friends. And then I've been doing that since COVID. And my sister, I always wanted to do real estate all my life. And my sister, she's a property manager. So she invited me to this mentorship program with multifamily. So I went there, and that's when I'm like, this is it. This is the way I could change my family's life. And this is what I always wanted. So that's how I got into the multifamily. And at the same time, I also got an opportunity to start doing single family rehab. I found an off-market deal because she's also a realtor. So then that's how I got into this.
Awesome. So what are you looking to get out of it?
My goal, like my motivation, is my daughters, just family. I want to change my family's legacy. I also want to be an inspiration for them. So the future generation, they able to be my uncle, whoever says they worked hard to build this foundation for us. We don't want to change that path for the legacy. And I also want to become a mentor, help other people reach financial freedom or pursue their goals, and give back to the community.
Awesome. Appreciate all of that. I'm sure you got questions. So Willie, we got Victor here on the line. What do you want to ask him, man?
One question I have you ever had a major setback in multifamily, and how do you navigate that setback?
Man, great question. A lot of people like to know setbacks. So again, I talked about buying that property from Hawaii. Like I was doing what everyone else is doing. Like I was in a high price market, and then I was running around to look around the United States of these low price markets saying, oh, well, it's too expensive where I live. Everyone else is investing in this place because there's more cash flow, there's more returns. I'm going to do that too. Right. So that was the setup of that conversation, which is what I said. And I bought a property in Ohio, right? Back whatever. The property manager was also the project manager, and they actually stripped our units down. We put a bunch of money into renovating and trying to bring it up because when we bought it, it was 50% occupied, another no-no. And then they stole. right? They stole money, they stole materials, and they were moving stuff
Mhm.
around. Not just me, but a couple of other apartment owners that they managed their properties that were out of state owners. So that's a huge setback, man. Like that threw a wrench in our whole world because people just assume, oh, money got stolen. Well, like I said, we had 50% occupied, then it dropped to 30. And here we still have tenants in this property from a multifamily owner perspective. And I still had to continue to pay water, trash, common area electric, even though no money was coming in. That comes out of pocket. So that was a huge setback. How did I overcome it? Well, unfortunately, we had to throw the towel in. Like, again, I share that story as an upset, but I didn't realize, which I do leave out because I try to take full responsibility, that the market tanked. I didn't know the market was tanking. That's my joke, right? Felt like it was just going on in my world, but the whole world took a shock during that time. So I had to overcome that. I had to stand in front of a judge. I had to call all my creditors. I had to pay I had a couple of investors that I paid back before I filed for bankruptcy. I had to deal with that, right? Because we also had to give account where money went to before we went to bankruptcy. My wife was pregnant with my twins. I had to overcome that. It was a lot. And that's not including like feeling like a loser, like personally, like, man, like, well, I suck. But coming out of the other side of that, really just that was how I overcame it. I was like, okay, I can't worry about that. I did the right thing. I did everything I could have done. Even the judge told us that. He was like, hey, you're not wrong, right? This is what you have to do here. And I had to rebuild very quickly. I had to go out and I had to let people know, hey, man, look, we just tanked on a deal. And they're like, man, everybody's tanking on a deal. And I'm like, really? Okay, well, cool. Here's what I need. I need to be financially free again because I was prior to, right? I need to start making money to take care of my wife and my twins that were getting ready to be born. And I had responsibilities. I had people who worked for me at the time that I had to go back and say, man, I got to figure out how to make money again so I can start taking care of their responsibilities, right? Not just my own family, but the people that were relying on me. So it was a lot to overcome, but it's a lot of focus. Like if I can put it down to one word, how do you overcome those things coming out of them? It is an extreme level of focus. A lot of people like, man, I want to get into real estate. I'm like, man, you know what? Real estate really translates to the giant word of responsibility. You're responsible. You have even a 4-family property. You're responsible for 4 families, right? Keeping a roof over their heads. It's not just cash flow and income. Like you become responsible when you assume that level of responsibility, not fault, but assume responsibility and taking care of people. It really changes how you see coming out of anything. You're like, dude, I'm responsible. I care about these people. I care about my tenants. I care about my family. And now I have to do more, right? So I think that was how I came out of it to answer that question. I'm sorry to go long on that because it's so important that people understand it. That's not a terrorizing story to stay away from real estate. That's just what I share with people when they're like, should I do it? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course you should. I mean, if you have money, invest with someone who's responsible. If you don't want to take that level of responsibility, and it sounds like you are. Yeah. So, man, I mean, I think you'd be great to have a conversation with somebody to do what you're doing because you are willing to take that level of responsibility, man. So that's awesome.
Yeah, great answer. And yeah, I think that was perfect. So come out the other side a lot stronger and ready to do more and bigger things. All right, Willie, back to you, man. What's next thing on your mind?
Another question is, I know you've been doing real estate for a long time. How did you find your balance with family and chasing your goal in real estate?
Again, when you're going through stuff, you don't really know what's tough. Looking back, you go, man, that was tough. I'll be honest with you. My wife and she's a realtor. I'm an investor. I've been doing this forever. She's been doing this forever. Our kids are all athletes. I was an athlete when I got out of the military. I even had a gym where we trained MMA fighters, special forces candidates, things like that for the last 10 years. And I'm still kind of, somewhat of an advisor consultant in that space too. We don't balance anything. Like this is our life. Our life is real estate. Our life is our kids. I go to all my kids' games. I pick them up. I go to my office. I have people who work with us. Me and my wife do lunch together, but we don't separate. How some families are like, well, we don't want to talk business. Well, our whole life is business. So we will talk business. Like we're partners. My wife is my mentor in real estate because I'm nose to the grindstone and she is too. So it helps to have that. So I like to share with people, if you're looking for balance, just be an investor. Just make your money, do what you do, invest it with someone else, then go live your life to somebody who's dedicated to the activity. So I don't want to paint the picture that there's balance. Now, if you're not going to do anything big and you're going to become financially free, buy some properties and kind of cruise and stuff like that, that's fine. There's the life balance. You can, I do this, but we believe in bonding.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll bond, even if it's driving to a property together where I'm like, man, look at this property. This is beautiful. But my wife and kids are in the car and stuff like that. And we're spending time. Then we go to lunch, then we this. That's how we do it to answer that question. So,
Yeah.
but there's no right way.
Another question I have, what is a great advice you'll give like a first-time person in syndication? What was
In
one of the,
syndication,
yeah.
that's a tough one. There's syndication and doing real estate investing are two different activities.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. Like syndication, you're filing paperwork with an attorney, with an SEC attorney. You're keeping some very strict requirements that allow you to go and raise money from a group of people to acquire an asset. Your responsibility needs to be at a very high level. Mm-hmm. So to get started, I guess I'd be like, hey man, you need to get an attorney and you need to have a plan. Don't just willy-nilly that. First, you'll go to prison. Like that's first. Like you could go to jail for doing that wrong, which is why I enjoy it, because I'm like, I don't want to go to jail, so I'm going to do everything that I'm supposed to do, and I can say no to the wrong things. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to get started, first you need knowledge, you need education, and I would say learn the real estate business first before you try to go learn to be a syndicator.
I agree. I think being a syndicator, and this is something that Victor talked a lot about. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with it, and so I think it's irresponsible to jump into syndications without knowing what you're getting into and how you need to do it. And so the attorneys are going to do a lot to keep you on the right side of the law and keep you compliant. The second person I would add is an experienced mentor, somebody who can teach you the business. The attorneys are going to keep you on the right side of the law, but if you screw up a business, you're still going to get sued. You're still going to have problems. You're still going to potentially file for bankruptcy. The attorneys are just going to make sure that you're compliant with like SEC, that you're compliant with all the laws. But end of the day, attorney's a great first stop, but experienced mentor is somebody that if you're going to be syndicating, doing this at a high level, you need to have that person with you too.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. Which is why I mentioned the real estate stuff. Like just learn the real estate side first. So then if you're going to get partners by raising money through syndication, the question about your business model, which is the real estate, right? How are you going to make money? You already have that answer.
Yeah. And Victor, that's why it's fun for me to have the experienced investor answer first, because I can just sit back and actually think. I'm like, you talk for 30, 45 seconds. I got 30 to 45 seconds to think. So
right.
Yeah. So yeah, you were on the spot. I had a little time there.
Man, you know what? You handled that beautifully.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
All right, Willie. So what else you got, man?
How do you evaluate potential partnerships?
Good one.
That's good. I'm very, me and my wife, we talk about this a lot. I'm very transactional. Like because I've grown up in the real estate business with a noose around my neck, I don't spend a lot of time, and I have done this in the past, meeting people for, how people say, well, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So let's go sit with them. Let's get to know them. Let's build a relationship first. Like typically I'm the reverse of that. I'm like, hey, let's figure out what we're going to build our relationship off of. So are we going to do business together? Because if I know we're going to do business together, I'll put the time into building what that looks like. So this is answering your question. Like if this person is interested in investing, or whether with me or by themselves, they have money or they don't, how can we add value to our business connection? And then if I know that that's there, I'll spend more time with them. I'll invite them to my kids', birthday parties and to my wife's parties and events we're doing. But if I don't think that we're going to eventually do business together, I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time with that person. I know that's bad. People be like, that's bad. But I have found in my past the other way around. When I was younger, there would be like some guy that, this guy buys a bunch of real estate, you should meet him. And then I go and they're like, meet me at this place. And I go have like 18 lunches with this guy and never do business with him. They're just lonely. And I'm like, I don't want that. Because to your point of balance my family, like but I would have much rather been with my wife today than meet with someone who's never I can't add any value to them and they can't add any value to me. So it's like I just want to be surrounded with people who I believe we have a future together, because that's how I want to live my life. So I really judge a lot of my potential partners off of where are we going? Because if you go, no, I never want to do real estate. I just want to do, I want to buy like flower hats and I want to sell that. I'm like, man, that's awesome. I could talk about that, but at some point I'm not, it's nice. And I may introduce them to someone else, but they're not a good partner for my real estate deal.
So I'll add to what he said. I get a lot of people, and LinkedIn is a great place to find, potential partners. But just adding to what Victor said, you've got to know what you're looking for, know what value you provide, and know what value you need from other people. Just earlier today, I had somebody reach out to me and they wanted to explore potential partnerships. All right. Very vague. I think 3 years ago, I would have probably taken that call. Yeah, sure. Let's explore potential partnerships. Right now, my response to that was like, can you be a little bit more specific at what you're trying to get? And if it's something that I'm looking for, I'll hop on a call with you. But if it's something I'm not looking for, I'm not going to, so yeah, just adding to what Victor said. And I think that is absolutely crucial is, know what you're looking for in a potential partnership. And that way you can draw your line in the sand and see if they measure up to that line in the sand. And then of course, the know, like, trust stuff is important. All right. But, they've got to be able to add value to you. You have to be able to add value to them, and know, like, and trust as well.
Have you ever had a bad partnership?
Absolutely.
Other than the person stealing money from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really, I guess I'm a responsibility type person. I try to do that because I can't affect what I'm not willing to see, right? What I'm not willing to confront in my own face. Like, even one of my last partners, he took $250,000 at the sale, and we had an agreement. Then once we, again, I got added to a loan, and then I was the operations guy. I found the deals, did all the stuff, oversaw it. We entered into a new agreement, right? Based on a written agreement. And then we're like, hey, we're scratching this agreement. And then we never got it drafted up. Right. And then when we sold, it was like some extra money there. That was $250,000. That was mine's. That was based on our first agreement that I elected to not put in writing. I was like, he's not going to do that. Whatever. We're already doing this thing. It's been 10 years, like 10 years. That's a marriage. Yeah. And that went sideways, man. I was brokenhearted, like rushed. And all I can do was kind of like, I knew it. I knew it in advance. I undershot it. It didn't jade me to be like, I'm never going to do, a bad thing. So it technically wasn't a bad partnership. It was a bad activity. So a lot of times people are saying, well, what was a bad partnership? Well, there's no bad partnerships. There's maybe some miscommunications or some lack of communications, and just saying, hey guys, look, here's what's happening. Is that still on the table? No. Okay, well, good. Here's what's new. Here's what's happening. Let's just put this down. And even if it's not, sometimes people are like, well, what if it offsets something, or it doesn't sit well? Well, I should have done that. What if, because, and truth be told, my other partner that I had passed away. He died. Right. Wow. And I didn't know that because we, kind of had after our partnership, we didn't talk for a while. And then my banker called me. He was like, hey, did you know he died? And I was like, no, man, I didn't. Right. So, but let's just move away from the partner thing. Let's say that partnership agreement hadn't been written out, and that was his family would have been like, hey, there's some money over here, and then we would have kind of been tussled around, and I was still able to deal with it. So sometimes the bad partnership, lack of communication, lack of putting things down, new agreements that kind of start moving on verbally over time, it helps to have those things in place. So there's not really we've had bad situations happen within partnerships, but they're typically only situations. I don't really always think that there's a bad partnership, because it's like having a girlfriend, right? If your girlfriend's crazy, you stay with her. Yep. Based on the signs. It's no longer her being crazy. It's you saw it, you missed it. Now what? So I believe real estate's the same way, because it's all a partnership. Everybody's a partner. Your bank, your partner, your tenants are partners, insurance companies. It's a lot of people in play.
Yeah. I left a partnership that I was in for a couple of years, and I wouldn't say it was a bad partnership. Okay. When we started, we all had the same goal. It was a very vague goal of, I want to make a name for myself in multifamily. I mean, that was really what our common goals were. But as we started progressing, we wanted to go different directions, and we had committed that we were going to do everything together. And, for the first several months and whatever, we were just doing deal after deal after deal, and things were good. But when it really came down to like direction, what direction do we want the company to go? We had different ideas. Okay. And the communication started breaking down. And it's like the boyfriend girlfriend scenario where it's like, this isn't working. But it took me a long time to realize it wasn't working, and I think there were 4 of us to begin with. One of the other partners announced that he was leaving. And that was kind of like the slap in the face that I needed. And maybe not slap in the face. That was kind of like the wake up call that I needed to realize, oh yeah, you're right. Things really aren't working, and actually leave the company myself. But like I said, it wasn't necessarily a bad partnership. We'd gotten to the point to where we stovepiped. We got to the point to we weren't communicating enough, and we were all pulling in slightly different directions. And like I said, once I made that realization, it was like, okay, this isn't going to get better. So I have a choice: put up with it or leave and do my own thing. So cool. Well, we are about out of time. So thanks to both of you for coming on the show today. Willie, great questions. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Victor, amazing answers. And I loved your story. But one last question for each of you. And Victor, you get to go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
You can Google Victor Bell, or you can go to bell-capital.com. That's our site. You can click Get Started. You can learn a little bit about our fund. If you're accredited, it's an accredited only fund. Or you can schedule a call and talk to myself or somebody on my team. And anywhere online, anywhere on Facebook, Victor Bell or Victor Bell Jr., or Instagram at The Real Victor Bell. And and also YouTube. I have some YouTube videos and things like that. So anything anyone needs, let me know. I appreciate it.
All right. And we'll throw a bunch of links in the show notes for people to figure that out. I get there quickly. Willie, same question for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
You can go on LinkedIn. My name is Willie Henriquez. On Instagram, Willie_Henriquez24. Or you could visit my company site, wvcapitalholdings.com.
Awesome. Hey, well, thanks again to both of you for coming on the show today. Very much appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you guys. I really appreciate you.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.